Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Weekly, the show with the most in-depth look at the latest geopolitical developments in the Holy Land. I'm Aaron Porras, and returning to the show as my panelists today are former Knesset member Dr. Einat Wilf and Avihu Sofer, a teacher of political science at Haifa University and a Ma'ariv columnist. Now, our topics today include an Israeli Arab man whose Israeli citizenship has just been stripped. But first, we're going to talk about the number one in the Israeli government, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the apparent turn for the worse in the criminal investigations implicating him. The Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff and longtime friend, Ari Harrow, has turned into the state's witness in return for immunity. His testimony has reportedly opened up several new avenues for police to take action, and we may already be seeing some of those said actions in play. The Prime Minister has just been given 15 days to cough up all the dates, times, and durations of his communications with Israel Hayom newspaper bigwigs. And despite it all, Netanyahu is still acting calm and pleading innocent, and he's not the only one standing behind him.
שהממשלה נראה נינוח, שוחחתי איתו גם אתמול ובטוח בעצמו, כפי שהוא חזר ואמר, אין כלום כי לא היה כלום. אני סומכת ב100% על ראש הממשלה. צריך להפסיק עם הלינץ' התקשורתי הזה של חלקים מהתקשורת ומהאופוזיציה שעושים את כל מה שניתן כדי להפיל את הימין, כדי להפיל את נתניהו. זה לא יעזור להם. מחליפים שלטון בקלפי, לא בחקירות ולא בכותרות.
So, Dr. Wilf, I'm going to start with you today. Netanyahu is brushing off pretty much all these allegations. He's saying there is nothing, there has been nothing, and there will be nothing. This has been a mantra for a long time at this point. But do you think that's a smokescreen? I mean, there must be some pressure at this point.
First of all, this is necessary for him politically. Basically, never in Israel's history was a prime minister charged while sitting as prime minister. A lot of people forget that Olmert was charged only once he was no longer prime minister. And the person who really brought them down was Barak and the parliamentary system. So the first thing that Prime Minister Netanyahu needs to do is to fend off any political dangers. So he needs to make it clear that he's not a lame duck, he's not on the way out. In many ways, the mere show of strength is necessary for his survival. It doesn't matter if it's true, if it's wrong. He knows that in politics, the mere inkling and demonstration of weakness is what brings the hyenas to your door. So he needs to demonstrate that as far as he's concerned, he's here to stay. Nothing's going to happen, because he needs to be very careful that neither one of his coalition partners will feel that they're under pressure to bring down the coalition and bring down the prime minister.
Do you think an indictment's on the way, though?
The process is long. The process is long, and the greatest danger for the prime minister is actually the interim time. So, for example, the process could take 6 months, could take a year, could take even longer. So the question for the prime minister, he needs to make sure that throughout the 6 months, year, in the interim, things might happen. He might call for an election. He needs to make sure that no politician, no member of the coalition, no head of party feels that he is so weak that this is the time to go for him.
So that's kind of a problem. You know, here you have Netanyahu who's standing his ground against the media, blasting him, you know, because the investigation releases little tidbits, and it's pretty much only what we get, you know, from the rest of the media as well. But, you know, is it fair to say that he can't effectively run the government while also being investigated by the media?
Well, why? Well, there's no need to say it, because the government has been run effectively, point blank. And I'll tell you more than that. Do you know anything about the investigations?
No, I just said.
What do you know about the investigations? Do you know anything about what we call the file 1000 or 2000 or 3000?
Yeah, I mean, we know what
do you
the
know
cases
about them?
are in general.
You don't know anything about them, my dear Aaron. So neither nor Einat and nor myself. We know what the media is reporting. Now, the media has different interests. Not to mention that in one of the investigations involved the biggest media company in Israel, Yediot Ahronot.
Yeah.
So, you know, we need to be very careful before we run into conclusions, because a person has the presumption of innocence unless he's been proved guilty. Not to mention the fact that investigations could be turned into an attack tool. So we need to be very careful. What's happening today is that the media is attacking Netanyahu in a devastating way, because they disrespect him. And that's okay, because they don't like him, because he's from the left wing, because from the right wing, sorry, because of thousands of reasons. It doesn't matter. At the moment, the investigation should be run by the people who need to investigate.
Well, so here's the
There's an
investigation.
attorney
You have the
general,
investigation
but there
who
is
has
an
already
attorney
stated-
general. He should run the investigation with no pressure of politicians, neither from the left nor from the right. No, with no pressure of the public. He should do what he needs to do, because the law in Israel and the investigations are run in investigation rooms, in the court, and
Well, I
by
wanna
the
talk
attorney
about
general,
that
and
later
not
as
by
well,
the
but-
media or in the square of the city.
But again,
What's happening
so
today,
again, if
Yes.
you're going to indict the media, I mean, here we have
I
again,
don't indict
or not the media, but
I'm saying that what's happening is that the media is creating an atmosphere that Netanyahu is already running away. He's not going anywhere. The government has been managed.
so
very
again, I mean,
carefully.
here if we go now to, you were saying like we don't know anything about it. The media is putting out all this
No,
information.
but listen to what I'm saying. I'm
And now we
saying
have-
that we should let the attorney general and the police to
Right.
investigate. Once they come with conclusions, then we sit down and discuss them. At the moment, we don't know anything. We hear bits of pieces of reporters that say one thing, the next day they say another thing. I don't know what's their interest
that-
and what's their. I know
so
one
again,
thing.
that brings
they
me to
need
my
to come
question.
with a scoop in order to keep the
so
news
again,
alive.
that brings me to my question. Now we have Netanyahu who has a 15-day time limit to turn over all of this information
Big
about
deal.
about his
About what?
conversations.
About his meetings with
is he-
Edelson and Amos Reagan.
Is the
not more
media
than that.
grasping at straws, or are they targeting something very specific, maybe to patch in some holes in their own
I'll tell you
timeline,
the
in their
way I
story?
see it. The media at the moment
So,
is... Sorry, please, Annette.
So the process is, first of all, this is unrelated actually. This has been an ongoing process and demand to demonstrate that Israel Hayom is essentially a news outlet that is run by the Prime Minister. This is unrelated to any of the allegations.
Okay.
To the
It's been
second one-
it's a
to the
it's a
second one,
long
it's somehow
it's
connected
not
because
related.
of Yediot Achronot,
But
whether he was...
hold on, I want to hear that.
It's not related because it's a long time request by a journalist to open up the question of whether Israel Hayom is an organization, a news outlet essentially run by the Prime Minister, in order to argue that this is a form of a gift, a form of money that is being given to the Prime Minister. And a lot of the things we're seeing now is the breakdown between kind of the facades that is kept and the reality. The facade that was kept is that Israel Hayom is a separate newspaper, a newspaper that basically is run independently, happens to support Netanyahu, but Netanyahu is not its chief editor. These things, such as the fact that now the Supreme Court told Netanyahu that he has to show how frequently he met with the editor of Israel Hayom.
And for how long.
And for how long, and with Edelson, to demonstrate that he really owned the paper. And in many ways, Edelson, it was a form of Edelson giving him directly the money via the paper.
So they're trying to establish in some way that Netanyahu was controlling editorial decisions at the paper.
And regardless of whether he tried to trade his control of the paper for better coverage in Yediot Achronot, which is what is known as the 2000 file, that in itself would be problematic. The fact that the newspaper really is a gift to Netanyahu, something that broadly everyone knows, but it's very different to know something and to establish it legally. So if you can begin to establish it legally, then
And to
there's
turn
another...
it into a criminal act.
Yeah.
That's a different story.
Well, that by definition is to receive that kind of gift, even if you didn't trade it for any
Having said
benefits,
it was
is already
proved.
criminal. Yeah,
Having
if
said
it
it was
proves.
proved. Okay.
But that's part of it. The other thing that, and it's not right to say that we know nothing. We know, and even the Prime Minister agrees, that he received all these gifts of the cigars and the
cigars,
champagnes.
yeah.
That is agreed. There's no dispute over the facts.
But we
There's
don't know
more
how
of a
many-
dispute.
we don't
There's
know
a
whether he
dispute over
gave
the
anything
facade.
in benefit.
Even before.
We don't know anything.
There's a difference between the question of whether there is bribery, which is one charge, and the question of whether you get a gift which you're not allowed. As a public
Graft.
person, you are not allowed to
So
receive
here
those
we-
gifts.
Well, but
period.
But we're
declared.
mixing here
And-
a few things. We are mixing the public aspect of things that you can say this is immoral, this is not nice, this should not happen, and the criminal aspect
It's
of
actually
things.
illegal. It's actually
Okay,
illegal to
but
receive gifts as a
but in
public
order to
person.
say that it's illegal, the police and the Attorney General need to say and to file an indictment and to say he has crossed the law. Nobody said that at the moment. At the moment, there is an investigation, which I'm happy that there is, because
So
I
I
think that
wanna-
at the end, we'll know whether it is or it's not. One more thing. They've been trying to take off Netanyahu off his chair in the past 9 years. and it's okay.
No,
This is
so
democracy.
this is
but
what I
there's
wanted
a
to
way
ask you
to
about.
do it. There are elections in Israel, and people have voted for Netanyahu. I know that half of the country, or 40% of the country, and maybe 90% of the media disagree with the decision of the nation. But that's what the people decided. You want to replace him? Go to the elections, replace him,
that's it.
win
I
him,
wanted to talk
take
about
him
that
off his
because you
chair.
talked about Olmert and you talked about the media and kind of getting
but
ahead of
Olmert
ourselves.
was charged and
Exactly.
And
so
he was
well, let me finish.
found
Let me finish.
Guilty.
So Dr. Wilf talked about Olmert and how he was charged after he came out of office, and that they didn't really waste his time with these investigations while he was a sitting prime minister.
No, it's actually not the way to describe it. The way to describe it is as the pressure of the investigations mounted before the charge, as the public grew sick with what appeared to be true, even before charges were put forward, Ehud Barak raised the issue that a prime minister cannot run the country with that kind of pressure, and therefore brought down the government.
But you know why
And,
Ehud Barak did that. We don't want to get into it.
No,
It's
but,
not the
that's
but
it.
story.
first of all,
That's
this is,
irrelevant.
That's a different
this is a
story.
process which was
It's
done
a political
by
step
the
that he thought was right. Him and
This
Tzipi
is
Livni thought it was right.
classic. This
to
is
do
a
politically.
classic parliamentary process. So a lot of the questions that Netanyahu's trying to fend off, even before the legal questions, are the ones that you correctly raised of whether he can run the country. This is why it's very important for him to demonstrate that he's calm, so that no one can say, look, regardless of whether these allegations prove true, right now we need a full-time prime minister. Netanyahu is no longer full-time prime minister, therefore I'm asking for a change in government or for new elections. All of these things are the politics, and the politics could very well determine the fate of Netanyahu long before the legal system does.
But at the
All right, well,
moment,
unfortunately,
at the moment,
I'm so sorry. We have to
No,
cut
but
off. We
need
got to move on to our next
finish
topic.
with just one last
We
remark.
have to move on to our next topic. I'm sorry I had to cut you off. But if in an Israeli first, a Haifa judge has just recently revoked the citizenship of an Arab Israeli man, Ala Raed Ahmud Zayud, who was convicted of committing a terror attack in 2015. The law permitting such action was passed in March of 2011, but was never used until now. Israelis across the spectrum were torn then, just as they are now, over how ethical it could possibly be to kick someone out of their homeland for committing a crime. Just listen to what some had to say 6 years ago. It hasn't changed a bit.
Revocation of citizenship is not something the democratic countries do. As the US Supreme Court has ruled over 50 years ago, citizenship is not a license to be revoked as a result of bad behavior. If people are found guilty in court, then they will go to jail, as they probably should, for committing such extreme offenses. But that has nothing to do with revocation of citizenship.
אזרחות אי אפשר לשלול מבן אדם, אתה חי פה, אתה נולדת פה, אתה קיים פה. יהודי כערבי, אי אפשר לשלול אזרחות של בן אדם. זכותו של כל אדם להביע דעה.
אם זה חל על כל אזרחי מדינת ישראל, ערבים ויהודים כאחד, כאזרחי מדינת ישראל, אז זה הגיוני. כל מי שבוגד במדינה ועובר על החוק, שיעיפו אותו מהמדינה גם.
So my first question is, what does the government really have to gain from removing Zayud's citizenship? He's going to spend the next 25 years in prison on Israeli tax dollars anyway, or tax shekels. So what do we have to gain from this?
I'll tell you the story. Let's look at it a bit wider. The story of the Arab Israeli citizens is turning into something that Israel is thinking or rethinking. Where are we going? Look what's happened in Al-Fahim. 3 young guys went up to the Temple of Mount and murdered two policemen. After a long time, blah, 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 let's leave what happened in the Temple of Mount afterwards. There was a funeral in Al-Fahim. 10,000 people came out to the street and shouted and demonstrated against the state of Israel. Not against what happened. Said that they would like to be shaheeds, meaning people who are dying and murdering people in the street and after that going to heaven. People who live in Israel, people who study in the same education system as we do, people who receive allowance from the country, not from the Palestinian authorities, people who receives pensions from Israel, meaning that there is a part in Israel, or there are people who are trying to develop this kind of direction, mainly the Islamic movement, the North Islamic movement and Sheikh Raed Salah, that are trying to take the Arabs in Israel and pull them aside and connect them to the Palestinian authorities and turn them into some kind of force against Israel itself. Now, Most of Arab Israelis are not there. 80 or 70 or 80% of the Israeli Arabs are not there.
I was
But
gonna
what
say,
are
I
we
mean-
going to do with the 10, 15, 20% of extremists that are acting against the country? Now, you need to understand, it's very hard to secure that. It's very hard to secure or to develop security acts against people who are Israeli citizens because they are part of the country, they live here.
Well, that's my-
So what they're trying to do with this Zayud guy, apart from going to prison because of what he did, is to show some kind of statement that people who will act a terror act, that will murder people, okay, will not be able to stay Israeli citizens and receive allowance from the Israeli government.
So, Dr. Wolf, I want to hear what do you think about this statement?
I absolutely reject every part of it. First of all, citizens of a state who murder under whatever guise, and here I don't see why one murder, because it's motivated by hatred of Jews, should somehow be considered worse than murder of women, the murder of wives, the murders of children. All of these things do not lead to the revocation of citizenship because everywhere in the world the notion is that a state has a criminal justice system and people are charged by the system, they go to jail, they serve. You do not revoke their citizenship. What is true and what's being said here is that revocation of citizenship is intended here as a political statement. It's not about the fact that it's murder. It's about the fact that to demonstrate, and this is something that some people in Israel certainly want, is to show the Arab citizens of the state of Israel
The
that
extremists of
they're,
them.
as a rule, that their citizenship is contingent. Because no Jewish citizen of the state of Israel feels that if they behave badly, murder, kill,
and I wanted
rape,
to ask about
their
that, you know, like,
citizenship
if we
will be
have-
revoked.
I wanted to ask about that. You know, if we're talking about extremists and sending a message to extremists, you know, what about, we have the Jewish extremists who burned the Dawabsha home 2 years ago. Would they be
Well,
kicked out? Would they be? Would their
they are
citizenship be
charged
revoked?
and proved to be guilty, maybe we need to discuss that again. You see that they don't do it.
To discuss it, sure,
the hand is not easy on the weapon. Zayud is one person, and I'm sure, if possible, they would do it with other people who murdered. By the way, the law allows it. The law allows it. The court allowed it. It's not something that came out of a political mind and somebody did it against the law. I agree that it's a political move, and I agree that it's a statement that I think we should show the Israeli Arabs, not that they are citizens on a trial, some kind, but that those that will cross the border and murder people. Zayud is a person who murdered, who ran over people and murdered them.
How
and
can
he's an
Israel
Israeli
claim
citizen.
to be respectful of religious differences if this law targets disproportionately the Arab-Israeli population?
My dear friend, Israel today is the country that gives the best rights to the Israeli Arabs in the whole Middle East.
True,
there is
but you
no
don't-
other Arab
but you
country in the
don't
Middle
also-
East. Aaron, listen. There is no other
It
Arab
doesn't
country in the Middle
but
East
it doesn't
who gives
necessarily
such
justify-
equal rights to the Arabs as Israel, and this is the way it should be. I don't think it's a prize.
That may be
I think this
true,
is how
but
it
doesn't
should be.
justify
What's happening today with
a
the most
law that
right-wing
targets one
But Aaron, we
population,
need to
one
connect to the
demographic over the
facts.
other.
What's happening today with the most right-wing government is that it's improving the state of the Israeli Arabs more than any other government that has been in the last 70 years. Having said that, we need to take this very small amount of extremists and show them that what they're doing is totally out and they are hurting their other friends.
So would you
their other Arab
advocate
Israeli
using this
friends.
law against extremist Jews,
We need to
Druze,
discuss
Christians,
that.
etc.?
We need to discuss that, by the way. I'm not against it. We need to sit down and discuss that. But a person who acts against the country, and the law allows it, in certain cases, the law allows it. It's not in every
So-
case. It's not like murdering a woman. It's a
So I
different
wanna talk
story.
about the law,
It's a
actually. I'm gonna
criminal
get
law,
back.
and that's a crime against the country. These are two different things.
So that's it. I want to get back to the law because right now, internationally speaking, this law is more or less unheard of. There are very few countries, I can't personally name any.
But there are very few countries who
that-
state
that
terror acts
remove-
like Israel, you know, that people are
True,
murdered
but
in the
they're not-
streets.
but-
You need to deal with it. It's
but
not
I
that
wanna
somebody
ask-
woke up in the
but I
morning
wanna
and
take-
wanted to
I
revoke
wanna
the
take this to
citizenship.
Dr. Wolf.
It's after Zayud murdered people.
Hold on, I want to take this because I know, you know, what is the international court system going to do about this? Can they do anything about this? Can Zayud take this to an international or humanitarian court and plead his case?
He certainly can try, and there are other countries that are struggling with the issues. One of the reasons is indeed also, why is in international law the revocation of citizenship such a gentle issue, such a problematic issue? Because the people whose citizenship was revoked in history are the Jews. The Jews were the only people whose citizenship was revoked. And it was revoked as part of a political program, always justified, always for good reason, but they were the people charged. So revocation of citizenship,
because they were Jews. This is a different
revocation, and I do contend that here too, you even heard here, the Arab that said, fine, he said, but first show me that this will be equally applied to Jews and Arabs. And you very well know that this is intended as a political message to Arabs that says, your citizenship in the state of Israel is conditional. And this is why I think, by the way, this will not stand. This is likely to be overturned, I think. And this is a slippery slope that Israel doesn't want to go in.
So you don't see this becoming like a return punishment or a return, something that the judges might start to turn to more often?
No, I think this will be a case where more likely we will pull back, this will be overturned and not used again, because it's really revocation of citizenship, especially in the case, and those are the cases that are problematic, the person does not have an alternative citizenship. Those are the cases that have historically been very problematic, and I do not see here the idea of revoking citizenship of extremists, of murderers, because if we are about to revoke citizenship, I have a whole list of people that I'm happy to see out of Israel. But this is not how you do things.
This is your opinion, but it's not how you do things. Here you have a guy who is acting.
So there is a court, and he is 25 years sentenced to jail, and he will go to jail. And frankly, I don't see why this was necessary. He's now going to jail for 25 years. And if nothing, it's really just a move that has no sense practically and only is going to hurt us internally and externally.
All right, well, I think with that, that's a great, excellent time to stop on that topic. All right, now moving on to finish our show, I'd like to end on a positive note. So let's get some final thoughts in one short sentence. What is the silver lining that we can gather from our subjects of view? I'll start with you. Short,
you
one
know,
sentence.
we are in the Jewish calendar, there's the Av month. We are in Av now. We've been to Tisha B'Av, and now it's Tu B'Av. These are two holidays. One is of the condemnation of the temple and everything that happened in Jerusalem. And the second one is the Love Day. I think that what we're seeing today in the Israeli society, mainly in the nation of Israel, is that separation. We see right and left and people with different opinions. People are fighting each other and so on and so on. I think we're moving towards the Rosh Hashanah, towards the New Year's. I think if the next year could be a year that we will, although we disagree, but above the disagreements, build some kind of bridge of love, then or connection. Let's not even speak about big words like love, or some kind of connection or understanding each other. I think we'll be in a better place.
Cool.
And even though since the day of King David, the Jewish people have always preferred competence over corruption, it is good to see that we do not turn a blind eye to corruption. We investigate it, and we seek to make sure that not even the highest up are free from answering to the law.
I like that sentiment as well. Both of them are actually pretty strong. We need love and honesty in our government. Those are two good things. All right, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today for this edition of ILTV's Israel Weekly. Thanks again to our guests, Avihu Sofer and Dr. Einat Wilf, and thanks to all of you for tuning in. See you next week, and shalom from Israel.